And then I was out for a
Wow.
while, you know. I had a seizure the week before my debut show too, as a solo artist. And a week from the day I was like on the stage playing, I was like, I can't believe I'm still alive. Like this is nuts. Like you know, so I just try to take like every opportunity I have to live my life like very seriously.
According to the World Health Organization, 50 million people around the world suffer with epilepsy. When I do podcasts on this channel, it's not about facts and figures and statistics. It's about listening to people's stories, learning from what they've gone through, learning compassion, and just learning how to make the world a better place through that. So I'm really glad that you're here to listen to April Rose Gabrielli, up and coming rock star, share about her experiences with being diagnosed, with learning how to deal with it. This is a complex neurological disorder with a lot of possible factors and triggers. And so her experience does not represent the experience of all people with epilepsy. Just wanted to put that out there. But thanks for being here. Let's get into it.
I've only been living as somebody with epilepsy for under 2 years now. But prior to that, my whole life I've struggled with different bouts of anxiety, OCD, depression. And you know, with touring, and I kind of just had like a volatile lifestyle. So like you know, in between tours and in between gigs and shows, and you know, when you're having writer's block, you really feel like your value, or at the time, I'm trying to not do this now, but a lot of the times I think our first go-to emotion is, oh, I don't have value, or I'm not worth anything because I'm not doing anything right now, or this doesn't feel as exciting as it could. You know, it's kind of like drugs without, you know what I mean? But so going on a huge, basically the biggest tour I've ever been on, playing full shows and all that, you know, full sold out houses, and then coming back, and then all of a sudden you're just like walking around the grocery store and you're like a normal person again, which you are. Like you know, we for some reason this whole rock star like facade is very, you know, ominous and mysterious, and people really, you know, play on that a lot. But anywho, so yeah, like there's just a lot of ups and downs. So I was probably fresh out, off of a very long tour, and it was like a week after. So I was just dying to do something like that again. And it was the summer in New York City, which is always really hot and kind of crazy because everyone's temper is like through the roof, like it normally is. Um, but yeah, that's kind of what was going on. And I also didn't know what I was doing with my career because I've been singing my whole life. And then I sort of went on a mission to be a full-time musician. And my goal was to get on a tour, a big tour as a auxiliary musician. So not being the lead, not being my music, like, you know, playing piano and just backing someone up. So that was like a goal of mine to sort of move forward and begin a professional career as a solo artist. I wanted to start, you know, watching how other people do it. And then I sort of had hit that goalpost. So it
Hmm.
was also a weird turning point where I was like, okay, now what? Do I keep doing this? Because I know what my end goal is. It's to, you know, have my own work, that I play by myself, and I can fill these houses with my work. You know, that'd be the goal. But yeah, so it was an interesting time. Yeah.
I know the touring life. It was
Yeah.
my life for 12 years. There were chunks of time that I wasn't on the road, but I know how the touring life exacerbates problems.
Yeah, definitely. And it's an escape too. There's a lot of escapism like associated with that too.
And I know how that desire to just feel special again comes up when you're not being
Hmm.
special. It's
Right.
it is a drug. Performing
Yeah.
in front of people, having people tell you afterwards that you did such a good job. Like
You're
it,
like, you're great. It's like, yeah, that's nice to hear. And then when you're just all of a sudden you're used to hearing and now you're not hearing anymore, it's like, oh, what did I do?
yeah.
But you didn't do anything. It's just you're not there.
When did epilepsy start to become a part of your reality?
Um, November 2020. So it's probably been like a year. It's been a year in November, and then probably a half probably close to a year and a half now, which is crazy. Yeah. And I've been in remission at this moment in time, for 8 months.
Wow.
So I'm hoping to stay that way. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like this is such a having to figure out how to live through the just like insecurity of what is my body going to do to me, like how
Yeah.
hard do I push myself, how do I listen to my body. I think these are just themes that really can resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah. And it's weird because for me at least, there's two things I want to say. Prior to having to, pay super close attention to everything all of the time now, I didn't realize how lucky I was to be born like completely healthy and completely able-bodied to the point where, when the time came I could, try any food, I could do any drug, I didn't really, but you know what I mean? Like I could do anything. I could have a drink here. I could have that. I could eat this. I'm a very free person, very open-minded. I'll try anything once for the most part. I won't jump out of a plane, but other than that, I'll probably like stuff like that. Like I don't like action stuff. But like most stuff that like keeps me on the ground, I'll try it. That sounds cool. So um you're so fortunate when you're born healthy or born able to really live like a free life and a free existence, and there's varying levels of oppression that people experience with health, with race, with gender, whatever now. And I totally took what I was just born with for granted for a long time until so many things got taken away from me. um and my way of life is very different now. Like I'm kind of still grieving the life that I used to lead because I didn't need it to change. I was really happy. I'm happy now, but it's different. It's like I was really happy with where I was at, and it changed very suddenly, and it changed for everyone around me too, which I'm not really someone who likes being taken care of or depending on anyone. So, having and epilepsy is very much so like I had a caretaker. If I were to have a seizure in public, I basically would be depending on other people to help me, before I came to, which, I could have only a seizure for only a minute, but there's a 15 to 20-minute period after the fact where I'm completely incoherent, and unable to communicate, unable to fend for myself. That's if you have a grand mal seizure. I'm not sure if other seizures are associated with a post-ictal state. It's called post-ictal state, and basically in that state is when a lot of injuries happen too, because people will be walking around their homes, not understanding what's going on, and they'll fall down the stairs or they'll walk outside. It's literally like you have a small bout of dementia or something. Basically yeah. So people think it's just like, oh, you have a seizure and you wake up. It's literally like, and people get injured just with the seizures, but then there's the scary thing for me and for my loved ones at this moment in time is that state for me, because I've people have been around me pretty much every time and been able to help me, but I like to get up and go and do, it's just for some reason it's in my head, but you talk incoherently. It's very strange. I've never witnessed it because it's basically me not conscious but doing all these things. So yeah, there's a lot of strange factors that people might not consider. But I definitely took for granted so much of what I just naturally had. You don't know what it's like, what is that expression? You don't know what you got until it's gone. But you try to fill it in with new stuff and new experiences and new things that make you happy. So I'm journeying towards that right now.
there there is this, just like with the toxic hustle culture mentality, there's a toxic positivity as well that's like always find the good and don't ever talk
Yeah.
anything negative. Like no, we're allowed to say when stuff just sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard too because like when I don't share a lot about it because I think there's also this like very weird platform for people expressing their issues on social media, and I find it like, while I feel like it could be very freeing and educational for some people, I find that people take it too far and it could become um negative or kind of like toxic, and I think people sort of try to reach and grab onto that, like it becomes their brand essentially, which it could work for some people, but there's a lot of, and I think like I said, it could be very freeing, and I think that's important, but for me it feels weird because I think there's a lot of people with issues that cannot actually advocate for themselves because they're too sick. And I couldn't talk about this for so long because I was incapacitated basically. And the few posts that I was able to get up within the time frame, I was just trying to make it look like I was still a functioning musician because I was in the process of trying to get signed to a record label. And nobody's going to take you, or my thought was they're not going to take you if you think you're sick all the time. So I'm trying to make it look like I'm still a functioning human being. But in any case, my whole point in bringing that up was I started to share about epilepsy here and there, and people are like, "Oh, so happy you're feeling better," which they mean well. Like you wouldn't know what I'm about to say until, but it's like glad you're feeling better. But it's like even people I know who have been in remission with epilepsy for 9 years, at any moment in time, if they have a biological switch, hormonal, whatever it could be, they could get thrusted right back into having seizures every day, every week, every month. So it's a issue. It's a neurological condition that is triggered by anything in life: caffeine, food, sugar, hormones, lack of sleep, alcohol, drugs, pretty much anything. You take a new medicine, it could trigger it. So it's weird when you have a chronic illness that's like at bay, but it doesn't necessarily it's like you're not like, oh, I'm free forever. I'm still medicated. I still take a lot of medicine to keep it in check. It took months to get the right medicines, and there's still side effects from the medicines I take that, keep me going. So it's strange because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm glad you're feeling better. It's like, I'm feeling better, but I'm also still really scared. And I can't not express that.
So
So
when we chatted before, I wrote down the word aphasia, but I don't even remember what that means. Does that have to do with
yeah. Yeah. So well, not for everybody, but in my little neurological journey, my first signs of misfires in my brain were when I experienced aphasia. So, aphasia, if you look it up, it's a neurological disorder where that affects your speech and your language comprehension, which is in your temporal lobe. So that's here. And of course, I'm a writer, so I use these very often. Um, and one day I was simultaneously cleaning out my closet, trying to get rid of clothes like I always am, and then watching TV. I was actually watching Marie Kondo, the beautiful little Japanese woman that finds what sparks joy and everything. Anyway, love the show. I was hooked. But then I start watching it or hearing in the background, and it all sounds twisted. It sounded all backwards, like somebody ran it through a tape or something backwards. And I was like, what the? So I was like, okay, this is weird. So then I thought like it would go away, or maybe I was just, I have looping thoughts a lot of the time too from OCD, and I'll get actual things stuck in my head for many days where it kind of is confusing, or I'm like, what is this? But it wouldn't stop happening. And then, my partner would talk to me and I couldn't understand it, or I would try to say something that I heard or, I wanted to say in my head. And then when it came out, it sounded like all backwards. Like I don't know, like I don't even know what the words would be. I would just be we always laugh about the one I used to say zing zong if. I'd be like, do you know what I'm trying, like zing zong if, like it'd sound all messed up, like backwards. I don't know. I really don't know. But basically, people that are easing into dementia or some other, like anything that sort of is what's the word I want to look, it's regressing. And when your cognitive abilities basically begin to regress, aphasia can happen a lot. But I luckily don't have that. But basically, a month before I had my first two seizures, it happened the same day. I was experiencing aphasia almost every day,
Hmm.
and it was really weird. And we made a doctor's appointment, but I didn't really tell anyone either because I really was convinced like maybe I'm making this up. Like I really, and that's the first thing I'll do. I'll blame myself. Like this is so strange. I was experiencing this aphasia thing, so I was like, all right, whatever. Maybe I did something wrong. It will go away. Maybe I'm dehydrated. Whatever. Yeah, and then yeah, that happened. I was speaking backwards for the first, and then it basically stopped after I had my first two seizures and was out of the hospital. And then a week or two later, it came back, and then eventually, I've been on about 4 or 5 different seizure medications. Eventually, once I got on my second or third, it stopped. but yeah, there's an assumption based on my past seizures that I have seizures in my temporal lobes. So, because when someone has a grand mal seizure, they'll usually turn a certain way, so your whole body kind of turns if you're laying down or whatever. And my epileptologist informed me that um, whichever way you turn, it's opposite of where it is happening. And because of all the other issues that I've had leading up to this, they think it's temporal lobe. So, yeah, it was a really strange thing. I wish that upon nobody. It was very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think
Weird.
probably something that must have been really uncomfortable is just not having the vocabulary to talk about it.
Yeah, I couldn't even, yeah, like that's another thing. Like, even with epilepsy now, too, it's like before this all happened to me, I had no idea that these experiences even existed because, like, for me at least, everybody's very different with this stuff. When I'm on the brink of having a seizure, I'll get a deja vu sensation, if you've ever experienced that, and that's your brain misfiring, basically. But it's called an aura in the epilepsy world, and you get an aura, and then it it continues to misfire until your brain shuts off. But while it's basically growing, you hallucinate. So I've seen things that I've never done shrooms. I've never done anything cool that makes you see fun stuff. Not ever in my life. I've only seen like some Beatles music videos and psychedelic illustrations. Like that's the closest thing. But I've seen like I'll be looking at something on the TV, see two eyes, one eye will go like this, or like like hallucinating. Or I was playing the piano once before an episode, and the keys started to turn. I was like, these look so crooked. It's an old piano. It's from like 1928. I was like, I don't remember them being so crooked. And then they just kept going. I was like, oh no, I'm going down. So I just I just went on, I laid on the ground and I hope for the best. But yeah,
Have you
it's really crazy.
have you seen that guy on TikTok who is he's so freaking brave to show such weak parts of his life, but he's got schizophrenia, and he will literally see people, he will literally have conversations with them not knowing that they're not real, and then he'll use his phone to record, to look through the camera on his phone, and then be like, you're not real, because they're not in the screen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the brain is so strange and complex. And now that we acknowledge the fact that emotions are heavily tied into the way that, we function and our, our it's completely all related now. I think more now more than ever. Um, it's just crazy. Like, yeah, like couldn't even understand, or I couldn't even fathom what that must be like because I've definitely had moments where I'll see, on the ground, I thought I saw something running across, I'll sometimes think I'll see like a squirrel in the apartment, and it was just I was just walking, and so I saw my shoe out of the corner of my eye, and it looked like something else. Those little moments are so scary. I can't imagine thinking that someone's actually just there, and you start to connect with that thing. It's just like I can't even. Yeah, people have it really tough, and it's you don't remember that when you're in the grind of every day trying to just make it through.
Yeah, that's such a great example of advocating for just normalizing talking about it. And like these words that have to do with schizo, like schizo, like people have used
Right.
as these demeaning words for so long. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
these are genuine disorders of the brain. This is not something
Yeah.
as a insult.
Yeah, it's crazy too because now having diagnosed, I realized how much it's actually made fun of, or like there's jokes in TV shows that about epilepsy or having a seizure I never even would have acknowledged before. Like I actually love Bob's Burgers, but I think it's one of the first episodes of Bob's Burgers that Louise, the little girl, I don't know if you know the show. She's the youngest daughter. It's a cartoon, but she's trying to get everybody's attention, and she's joking. She's like, "Ah, I'm gonna have." I don't know if she says she's gonna have a seizure, but the joke was somebody put a wallet in my mouth, which is something you should not do if someone's having a seizure. But sometimes when people are having seizures, people will for some reason put stuff in their mouths so they don't. I don't know why, but you should not do that. That's not something you should do. but the wallet used to be a thing. It's kind of like it should be known as like when when somebody's hurt, don't move them because you could hurt the neck or whatever it is. So people will try to put stuff in their mouths when someone's seizing to help. I don't really know. So because they're biting down, I forget. I don't really know. But anyway, I just know that that's a reference to someone having a seizure. And she said it in the show. I was like, that is so, like, I wouldn't have ever even picked up on that, like, not having been sensitive to it.
That reminds me as well of the whole like spiritual connections to epilepsy and these
Hmm.
disorders that people have like still very, very dated perceptions on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like, because like 1 in 26 people have epilepsy. Like somebody yeah. So like, and there's a lot of people I've spoken to once I've opened up about like I've experienced it. If I talk about it at shows, at least one person comes up to me. I did play 5 shows on the East Coast. At least one person from most shows said something. Oh, I have it. I've had it. My brother had it. Whatever. Somebody has it. So and I it's so common, but there's so little we know about it. There was this bias for many, many years that if you had seizures, you were basically being taken over by the devil, like you were a witch or something like that. So they would just like burn these poor people at the stake. And that's why they don't know about it because they weren't like interested in knowing why, you know. But it's crazy too because I've heard that someone like Harriet Tubman used to have seizures while journeying, and they basically just documented them as these episodes. She'd sleep it off and then she'd get up again. So it's really strange. Like throughout history, though, like it wasn't something that people found like important enough or culturally appropriate enough to research. So I think that kind of has a lot to do with why we're behind unknowing. It also is the brain, and there's so many different things that we just don't know and can't know. Um, but yeah, I also think too, many people, I think obviously there's varying scales of people with epilepsy and how they're disabled by it. But um, me personally speaking, it's hard for me to say I'm disabled because I'm currently able-bodied. I'm able to do most typical things, but I'm only disabled when I have seizures or when I'm recovering. But on a day-to-day basis, I had to get I don't have a license because you're not supposed to drive. You're not. So technically speaking, it's something that, disables you. But it's strange because there's so many varying degrees of that. So if someone were to meet me, I'd be like, hi, I'm disabled. They'd be like, oh, you're fine. I'm not really interested in knowing what happens to you when you're not fine because you're mostly fine. So I feel like there's like a lack of interest in knowing why because it's only a partial inconvenience. It's not a constant inconvenience. So I don't know. That's my take. I don't want to offend anybody. I just like that's from personally experiencing it. That's what it feels like to me. I'm thankful that I play music because I think it's the only thing that motivated me to get out of the house and live my life again. Because we got shows and tours and things that I'm like, I can't miss that. I don't care. But I was lucky that it got me out of the house and, by whatever means necessary, we made it happen. It was convenient to be dealing with that debilitating issue during lockdown, but it still continued kind of after the fact where I mean, I went to the Tribeca Film Festival and the next day I had a seizure and was hospitalized for like 3 days. I had 5 seizures actually same night. I get them in cycles, so it's really messed up. So I have to be hospitalized every time. So like I went to the Tribeca Film Festival, life is great, life is grand. And then next day I didn't sleep enough or maybe I had caffeine or I don't know, I forget what the trigger was. And then I was out for a
Wow.
while. I had a seizure the week before my debut show too as a solo artist. And a week from the day, I was like on the stage playing. I was like, I can't believe I'm still alive. Like this is nuts. Like so I just try to take like every opportunity I have to live my life like very seriously. So I think that's why my stakes have been like unusually high lately.
How is it with you have to not only be super careful about what you eat, but you have to be super careful about how you feel?
Yeah, like I have to say for everybody's triggers are different. It's kind of like, with diet, people are, certain things they like and they don't like that make them feel better. Um, for me, I have to be like very aware of how I'm feeling. Just because, any for so many months we would try to look for what was happening or what the signs were. So I'm just in this state of always thinking, okay, is this going to affect it or is this going to affect it? How am I feeling? I have to get between 7 and 8 hours of good sleep every night, which I love to sleep when I was asleep, but I can go on 4 or 5 hours of sleep easily. Like I never really had to sleep. I'd always get up and just go, or be up late and then be out early in the morning. So it takes a couple of hours out of my schedule, but it's okay. Things like that. And then just, not I'm drinking decaf coffee all the time. Because I think caffeine has to do with it, but I just don't want to take any risks either. Like some people, certain medications you absolutely cannot drink on one that you cannot drink on. But, any sort of triggers that are out there, I stay away from because it's worth preserving the quality of life. And there are still people on tons of medicine, all of the things that they're trying to do, taking away from these triggers that still experience it. So it's not the end all, but you know, taking your medicine on time and knowing your triggers and knowing your times of day too. Like I only have experienced seizures between 9 and 10 in the morning and 9 and 10 at night.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've had a lot of deja vus and weird kind of half episodes in the middle of the day, but like between the morning and the night are my like even when I get my license back, I'm probably not gonna drive during those hours because just out of caution.
Hmm.
But yeah, there are people that get them, they only have nocturnal seizures, which are extremely dangerous. Um, too,
So
which I don't have those luckily yet.
I have a
Yeah.
weird question, and
It's okay.
maybe it's just like super uneducated. I don't know, but do you think is or do you think that epilepsy is something that you're born with, or do you think it's something that developed because of not getting enough sleep or some kind of trigger?
That's a good question. Well, I can't really say, and I'm not really sure. I have like my theories because I have been getting deja vu since I was 8 years old, intense ones. So I may have had seizures in my life as a child and never knew. Maybe I was having them at night, but who knows? Like I don't really know. Um, and so in terms of it just developing, I mean, there's different phases in your life where it develops. Like children will have it, and then in a lot of cases they grow out of it because they have hormonal change. There's people that are, there's a big group of people I've seen like on Reddit. A lot of people were diagnosed within the time frame that I was, between 26 and like 30. Like this weird, and I think there's a shift there. Like maybe it's a hormonal thing.
Mm.
Um, for me personally, I also was I didn't really have a healthy lifestyle. So if I was prone to it, I don't think that helped. You know what I mean? I don't think that really helped. But also we need to consider the people that have epilepsy that were actually physically harmed or physically injured. And so there's that whole group of people that it didn't just happen upon them. They were in a really bad car accident or I really think it could be anything. And that's another thing that hasn't been super clear. Because there's also like for a while they thought I was just having migraines, really intense migraines that were throwing me into seizures. Um, Me personally, mine just I like to like overshare to just like if in case anyone's listening and they need help, this is I wanted to say mine actually are triggered by hormones. So 40% of women with epilepsy have catamenial epilepsy. That means it follows your menstrual cycle. So I'm also on a combination of epilepsy medicine, seizure medicine, but the therapy that I use to contain my seizures is hormonal. So you know what I mean? So if you're a female, it could be that, I've always had PMS. I've been getting screened for endometriosis for a while. I've just always had like issues, hormonal issues generally speaking. And I think it also played into mood disorders that I've had and things like that. So it kind of makes sense to me that an extreme hormone imbalance or a hormone issue could be triggering these because I've dealt with it my whole life. So
Hmm.
in my case, that's a thing. And if for some reason somebody's listening to this and hasn't tried that yet, I would. or if you're on a hormonal therapy, maybe it's not working, I don't know. So, or it's causing that, but
How do you want to advocate for people
um,
in your similar boat?
how do I mean, I just try to talk about it as much as I can. I was kind of inspired to do that by Kurt Eichenwald. He's a New York Times bestselling author. He wrote this great book. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's his life um, uh, as a young adult with epilepsy, and he's got a fantastic career. He's creative. He's brilliant. Um, and he sort of like what I took away from it was, he was able to push through and experience a lot of good things from sharing something that's not so great. So I'm no medical professional. I don't even really have my own issues figured out yet, but I just feel like if there's talking points or there's an open area of communication, it really couldn't hurt because, like we all should be able to ask these questions. I think obviously people don't people with disabilities or people that have their own own issues don't need to necessarily be that fountain of knowledge. Sometimes that can get exhausting, so there needs to definitely be like a respectful boundary there. But in my thought, I think for me where I'm at right now, I'm in a place where I feel healthy enough to talk about it and to share positivity and knowledge about it in a way that could be helpful, or just to just say, hey, I that sucks and I experienced that too, and it will be okay. Like I follow an epilepsy memes page on Reddit, and I get so many, it's all horrible stuff, but it makes me laugh because I'm like, oh my God, I'm I could have made this myself. Like this feels so relatable. It's so crazy, but and it's something as silly as that can like make your day a little better, being like, oh, it's not just me. I don't have to be embarrassed. But also something in Kurt Eichenwald's book too, his friend was quoted saying basically um if more people knew socially, if more people knew how to handle a seizure or knew how to handle people with epilepsy, it wouldn't be seen as this big inconvenience or this mystery. Like if it was, how we learn CPR, how we learn how to use I think it's a defibrillator, the heart thing.
Hmm.
Cut that part out. um, but just how we learn most things, like just common knowledge. Oh, if somebody's sick, what do you do?
Hmm.
It's just knowing, okay, this is a common problem. If someone has a seizure, what do you do? Just being able to talk about it and have, and that goes for all people that need to at some point depend on others. We should be there for each other. So if it's if it's open for conversation and we're well educated on the subject as a whole, I think it will cause a lot less issues. So that's why I try to, in terms of advocating, like I can't really tell anybody else's story but mine, but it's worth telling because I think it could help.
But like, if you notice someone in this kind of, is fugue state a good word? Um,
Yeah.
if you notice someone in this state, like what should you do for them if there's nobody else
Every
that's noticing, kind of deal?
well, so typically speaking, like, and this is in terms of like a grand mal seizure, you'll see somebody probably fall, or if they're not already laying down, it's a full body like convulsion, and you'll be able to tell something is wrong right away. But the important thing is if you see somebody fall, if it's epilepsy or not, you should cushion their head, make sure they're, especially with epilepsy, because a lot of times people will hurt themselves hitting their head on the ground. It's like people have very intense convulsions. We just have to make sure their head is cushioned and they're turned over, because if somebody's seizing, they can choke on their own drool. Some people also throw up. So it's very important that you put someone facing kind of on their side or down, so that's not happening. Um, yeah, and also I guess you should, if it's over 5 minutes long, you should call 911. You should call 911 anyway, especially if they don't have anyone with them. And always check. A lot of people with these kinds of issues, especially epilepsy, they'll have something like a medical ID on their phones or watches. That's something to also look for too. But basically, you should call 911, or whatever the emergency line is where you are, and you know um, let them know somebody's down. It may be a seizure. I'm not sure if they have a history. And then just kind of keep them as best as you can, keep them where they're at.
Hmm.
you know yeah. just so
especially
they could be attended to.
especially for the wandering away phase.
Yeah, yeah, and people are different. That's just what happens to me, but I know that like it's definitely an issue for people.
Kind of makes me think of of sleepwalking.
Yeah, yeah. Like if you've ever like I've never uh slept walk. I don't know like the past. I've never done that. But I can imagine because I mean, one minute I'll be watching TV and then the next minute I wake up somewhere else. Like, or like I was in the shower and then I woke up on my bed. I'm like, wait, why? What happened? You know, and you're not like fully awake. You're kind of just like in a weird like, and that's after I've gone through the sort of post-ictal phase. Once you start to come to, you
Mm.
know, like I was the first time it happened, I was going to sleep, and then what felt like a second later, I was sitting up in the bed. The lights were on, and there was two strange men standing in my bedroom. They're paramedics, but I was like, what is going on? Like, I had no clue. I mean, now when I kind of wake up, I'm like, oh, yeah, a seizure. That sucks. But like the first time it happened, I was like, what is going on? So it's kind of like you knock out and then you wake back up. It's like if you've ever had like surgery and they put you under, it's like probably a similar thing. My debut record is mostly about this. And I mean, you wouldn't necessarily know that, but the whole idea is, you know, your future isn't guaranteed. And, you know, a lot of the songs that I've written for this record, half of them were written before this happened to me, and half of them were written after. So there is a lot of life lived on this record, and the summation of it all is, you know, your life is essentially what you experience, and it's your mindset. So you can either say, "Hey, I woke up feeling sick and disabled and like shit, and like I can't believe this happened to me, and I'm grieving and this," or you can say, "Hey, I woke up alive. Let me do what I can here," you know? And it's easier said than done because it's easy to I mean, it's hard waking up constantly to an unknown or to fear or to pain or sickness, you know? So, I mean, people should fight their own fights the way they want, but for me, I have to just be like, "Okay, I woke up alive. I gotta do my best here
Mm.
because I wanna live a life that I create, and I don't want anything else to control that." So, that's the goal, but
That's awesome.
yeah, so
Yeah,
yeah, I think it's important to talk about. People will get the music more. You know,
I
it's very specific.
love your voice. It's just so soulful and powerful and so much feeling in it. And I just dream of the day that I see you collabing with Pink. Like
Oh god, yeah, let's put that one in the ether. That'd be great. She's amazing.
the way that I end my conversations is I give hugs. Hugs.
Sending you a hug.
And I don't know if you've watched any of my other videos, but for the specially cool people, I also end them with the nostrils of death. Are you familiar?
No.
Okay, so it's like this. If you want to join me, if you no pressure, but you
Okay.
flare your nostrils, and
Okay.
then you bring them to the camera, saying "nostrils of death."
Why?
I don't know. I just started
Like
doing it,
this? Nostrils of death.
like in a slow motion, like leaning, like nostrils of death.
Well, okay. You're the pro. You just I can't follow that up.
Hold on, honey, I'm not strong or steady. I